Dr. Han Tawan stood at the window of his office, looking at the night sky. The red dot of Mars shone brightly, like it was calling to him. He had spent 15 years working on his plan to make Mars a place where humans could live. Tomorrow, he would present this plan to the International Space Coalition. On his desk, papers and tablets showed his life's work. He had found a new way to change Mars from a cold, empty planet into a world with air people could breathe. His plan used special machines to make oxygen and tiny bacteria that could live in Mars soil. These bacteria would help make the air better for humans. "Dr. Han, your presentation is ready," said Dr. Kim Ji-ah, walking into his office. She was the best atmospheric scientist in South Korea, and one of the few people who believed in his ideas. "I've checked all the numbers again. They work." Taiwan smiled at his colleague. "Thank you, Ji-ah. But will they listen? The coalition thinks terraforming Mars will take hundreds of years. They won't like hearing that we can do it faster." "Then make them listen," Jaya said firmly. "Your ideas are good. Your bacteria can live in Mars soil and help make oxygen. Your machines can protect the new atmosphere we make. Show them the proof." The next morning, Taiwan stood in front of 50 people from the coalition. They were the most important scientists and leaders from space agencies around the world. Some looked bored. Others looked doubtful. A few were already shaking their heads. "Mars can be our second home," Taiwan began, his voice steady. "Not in 200 years, not in 100 years, but in just 20 years. He heard people starting to whisper, but he continued. "My team has made special bacteria that eat Mars rocks and make oxygen. We have built machines that can protect the air these bacteria make. Together, they will change Mars forever." An old scientist stood up. "Impossible. The dust storms on Mars will destroy your machines. The cold will kill your bacteria. This is a waste of time and money." But Taiwan was ready. He pressed a button, and a video started playing. It showed his bacteria living in soil just like Mars soil. They were growing and making oxygen, even in the terrible cold. Another video showed his protective machines working in a huge dust storm. "These tests are real," Jaya said, standing up to support him. "I have checked them myself. Dr. Han's plan will work. We have already made the bacteria and built small versions of the machines. They are ready for Mars." More people started whispering, but now they sounded excited. Taiwan saw some of them looking at his data carefully. They were starting to believe. The coalition's leader, Dr. Wilson, stood up. "Dr. Han, your ideas are different from anything we have seen before. They are dangerous. If they fail, we will waste billions of dollars." He paused, looking around the room. "But if they work, we will make history. We will give humanity a second planet to call home." Taiwan held his breath. Everything depended on what Dr. Wilson said next. "The coalition will support your project," Dr. Wilson said finally. "You have 1 year to prove your ideas work on Mars. If you succeed, we will give you everything you need to terraform the whole planet." The room burst into loud talking. Some people were cheering. Others were arguing. But Taiwan only looked at Jada, who was smiling broadly. "We did it," he said quietly. "No," Jaya corrected him. "We are just beginning. Now the real work starts." As they left the meeting room, Taiwan looked out a window. Mars was not visible in the daytime sky, but he could feel it waiting. Soon, he would be there, starting the biggest project in human history. He would change a whole planet and make it ready for people to live there. The dream he had worked for all his life was finally coming true. But as Jaya had said, this was just the beginning. The hard part was still to come. 3 months after the coalition meeting, Taiwan looked out the window of the landing ship. The red surface of Mars stretched out below him. His heart beat faster as the ship descended toward Base Olympus, their new home near the huge mountain called Olympus Mons. "Landing in 5 minutes," announced Kang Do-hyun, their chief engineer. He was the best pilot on the team, chosen specially for this mission. His hands moved smoothly over the controls as he guided the ship down. Dr. Kim Jia sat next to Ta-1, checking the air pressure readings. Behind them, Lee Sun-ho and Park Min-ji were securing their equipment. These 5 people would be the first terraforming team on Mars. They would change this empty world forever. The ship landed with a gentle bump. Everyone was quiet for a moment, thinking about what they were about to do. Then Ta-1 stood up. "Let's make history," he said simply. They put on their spacesuits carefully. The air outside was too thin to breathe. The temperature was far below freezing. One mistake could kill them, but they had trained for this for months. Do-hyun opened the door, and they walked out onto Mars. The red dust stretched as far as they could see. Olympus Mons rose into the sky behind them, 3 times taller than Mount Everest on Earth. "It's so quiet," Min-ji whispered through the radio. "Like nothing is alive." She carried samples of the special bacteria in protected containers. These tiny living things would help start changing Mars. They worked quickly to set up their base. The machines they brought would give them air to breathe inside and protect them from the cold. Sun-ho checked the ground with his tools, making sure it was safe to build there. "The soil here is perfect for our bacteria," he reported. "Better than we hoped." By the end of their first day on Mars, Base Olympus was working. They could take off their space suits inside. They had a place to sleep, work, and eat, but they had no time to rest. The next morning, they started setting up the atmospheric processors. These huge machines would help make breathable air for Mars. Do-hyun led the work, making sure each machine was perfect. "These have to work," he said, checking every connection twice. "They're the heart of our whole plan." Jaya worked with Min-ji to prepare the bacteria. They would release them near the processors, where the machines could protect the air the bacteria made. But as they worked, Jaya noticed something on her screens. "Ta-1," she called urgently. "There's a dust storm coming. A big one." They all gathered around her screen. The storm was huge, bigger than any they had trained for. It would hit them in less than 6 hours. "If that storm damages the processors before they're ready," Do-hyun said, "we lose everything. The coalition will shut us down." Ta-1 looked at his team. They were all tired from working, but he saw determination in their faces. "We have 6 hours," he said. "We can either wait out the storm and lose days of work, or we can finish setting up the processors now. It's dangerous, but it's our choice." "We didn't come to Mars to play it safe," Min-ji said firmly. They all nodded. Without another word, they put their space suits back on and went outside. The sky was turning dark as the storm approached. They could see the wall of red dust coming toward them. For the next 5 hours, they worked faster than they ever had before. Do-hyun and Sun-ho finished setting up the processors. Ja and Min-ji released the first bacteria into protected areas. Ta-1 checked everything, making sure it would survive the storm. They barely made it back inside before the storm hit. The wind screamed around their base, throwing red dust everywhere. The whole building shook. Through their windows, they could see nothing but swirling red darkness. For 3 days, the storm raged. They took turns watching the readings from their equipment. Either their work would survive, or their dream of terraforming Mars would end before it really began. On the 4th morning, the storm finally cleared. They looked out at their equipment, holding their breath. The processors were still standing. The protected areas were intact. When they checked the bacteria, they found something amazing. The tiny living things weren't just surviving. They were growing. 6 months had passed since the first dust storm. Inside Base Olympus, Park Min-ji bent over her microscope, studying the latest bacteria samples. What she saw made her gasp. "Everyone, come here quickly," she called out. The rest of the team hurried to her laboratory area. "The bacteria are multiplying 3 times faster than we expected," Min-ji explained, pointing to her screen. "They're not just surviving. They're thriving in the Martian soil. Taiwan looked at the data carefully. This was the best news they had received since landing on Mars. Their special bacteria were doing better than anyone had hoped. The soil tests show they're spreading beyond the protected areas, Sun Ho added. He had been tracking how far the bacteria moved through the Martian ground. They're changing the soil as they go, making it more like Earth's soil. Jaya studied the atmospheric readings from their processors. The oxygen levels are rising too. It's still a tiny amount, but it's happening faster than we planned. Their success made them all smile, but Do-hyun looked worried. He had been working on the atmospheric processors, making them stronger after learning from the first dust storm. I have good news and bad news, he said. The good news is I found a way to protect our processors better from storms. The bad news is we lost contact with Earth 3 hours ago. Everyone went quiet. Losing contact with Earth was dangerous. They needed to talk to the coalition about their progress and get help if something went wrong. How long until we can talk to Earth again? Ta-Won asked. I don't know, Do-hyun answered. Something's wrong with our main communication system. The backup system isn't working either. They gathered in the control room to discuss what to do. Their next big step was to release more bacteria and increase the power of the processors. But without being able to talk to Earth, it was risky. We should wait, Do-hyun said. If something goes wrong, we'll be alone. But the bacteria are growing so well now, Min-ji argued. This is the perfect time to expand the project. We might not get another chance like this. Sun Ho agreed with Min-ji. The soil conditions are perfect right now. If we wait, they might get worse. Jaya looked at the weather readings. No storms are coming. The weather is as good as it gets on Mars. But Do-hyun is right. It's dangerous without contact with Earth. Taiwan listened to everyone carefully. As team leader, he had to make the final choice. They could play it safe and wait, maybe losing their best chance to move forward, or they could take a risk and continue with their plan. He thought about their first day on Mars, when they chose to face the dust storm instead of hiding from it. That risk had paid off. Their project was working better than anyone had expected. We came here to change Mars, he said finally. Earth chose us because they trust us to make the right decisions. I say we move forward. The team looked at each other. They knew the risks, but they also knew this might be their best chance. Let's vote, Ta-Won suggested. Everyone who wants to continue, raise your hand. One by one, they all raised their hands. Even Do-hyun, after a moment's hesitation, joined them. Then it's decided, Ta-Won said. Tomorrow, we start the next phase. Min-ji, prepare the bacteria. Do-hyun, get the processors ready. Sun Ho and Jaya, map out the best areas to expand into. As the team went to work, Taiwan looked out the window at the red Martian landscape. Soon, they would take the next big step in changing this planet forever. He hoped they were making the right choice. That night, as the others slept, Min-ji checked her bacteria one last time. In the samples under her microscope, she saw something unexpected. The bacteria weren't just growing faster. They were changing in ways she hadn't planned. She wrote it in her private log, deciding to study it more before telling the others. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new discoveries. Mars was starting to change, and it was changing them too. Contact with Earth had returned after 2 weeks. The coalition was happy with their progress, especially after hearing about the bacteria's success. Now, 3 months later, the team was seeing even bigger changes. Jaya stood in the monitoring room, looking at her screens with amazement. The air is changing, she told the others. Our processors are working better than we hoped. There are small valleys near Base Olympus where the air is thick enough to hold moisture. Sun Ho pointed to his geological readings. Look at this, he said excitedly. Water vapor is starting to collect in the atmosphere. It's not much, but it's real. The first steps toward making rain on Mars. The team gathered around the screens. After 9 months on Mars, they were finally seeing big changes. The bacteria had spread across a large area, making oxygen as they grew. The processors protected this new air, keeping it from floating away into space. But Minju looked worried. She hadn't told anyone yet, but her bacteria were still changing. They were growing faster than ever, but they were also different from her original design. She didn't know if this was good or bad. Suddenly, all the lights in Base Olympus turned red. Alarm sounds filled the air. Processor 6 is failing, Du-hyun shouted, running to his control panel. Its core temperature is too high. If it explodes, it could damage the other processors nearby. Can you shut it down from here? Todd-1 asked quickly. Du-hyun tried, pressing buttons rapidly. No, the remote controls aren't working. Someone has to go there and shut it down manually. They all knew how dangerous this was. Processor 6 was 5 kilometers away from the base. The path there crossed rough ground. And if the processor exploded while someone was trying to fix it? I'll go, Ta-1 said. I know these processors better than anyone except Du-hyun, and we need him here to monitor the situation. You can't go alone, Jaya said firmly. It's too dangerous. There's no time for two people to get ready, Ta-1 replied. Every minute we wait makes it more likely the processor will explode. Before anyone could argue more, he was putting on his spacesuit. The others helped him check everything twice. His air supply would last 6 hours. He needed to reach the processor, fix it, and return before his air ran out. The temperature is still rising, Du-hyun warned as Ta-1 prepared to leave. You have maybe 30 minutes before it reaches critical levels. Ta-1 nodded. Then he stepped out into the Martian day. He drove the small rover as fast as he dared across the red ground. Every bump made him worry about damaging the rover. Without it, he would never make it back to base in time. Through his helmet radio, he could hear the others monitoring his progress. The processor's temperature kept rising. Wind began to blow, throwing red dust into the air. The weather on Mars could change very quickly. Finally, he reached Processor 6. Its metal sides were hot enough to see heat waves in the thin air. Tai-1 worked quickly, opening the maintenance panel. Inside, he could see the problem. A dust storm had damaged one of the cooling units, causing the others to work too hard. 10 minutes until critical temperature, Du-hyun's voice crackled through the radio. Tai-1's hands were shaking as he bypassed the broken cooling unit. He had to redirect the power flow without shutting down the whole processor. One wrong move could cause the explosion he was trying to prevent. 5 minutes, Du-hyun warned. With a final adjustment, Ta-1 connected the last wire. The processor's hum changed tone. On his portable screen, he saw the temperature starting to drop. It's working, he said with relief. The temperature is going down. The whole team cheered through his radio. But as Tai-1 walked back to his rover, he saw something that made him stop. In a small valley near the processor, where the air was thickest, tiny green spots dotted the red soil. The bacteria weren't just making oxygen. They were making it possible for the first plants to grow on Mars. He knew then that even with all the dangers and problems, they were going to succeed. Mars was coming alive again. Jia sat in front of the communication screen, trying to stay calm as she talked to the coalition leaders on Earth. Their success on Mars had created new problems she hadn't expected. The United States and China both want to send their own teams to Mars now, Dr. Wilson told her. They say one country shouldn't control the terraforming project. But we're not one country's team, Jaya replied. We're an international group working for everyone on Earth. The screen showed more faces joining the call. Leaders from different space agencies looked worried. Some looked angry. Your team has done amazing work, a Chinese official said. But Mars belongs to all humanity. We need more control over what happens there. Back on Mars, the rest of the team watched the discussion on their screens. They had been on the red planet for almost a year now. The valleys near their base had small amounts of oxygen. The bacteria were spreading. Everything was working better than they had planned. They want to take over our project, Tai-1 said quietly. All our hard work. Suddenly, their radar system started beeping. Sun Ho checked the readings and looked surprised. A ship is coming to Mars. It's not from the Coalition. They soon learned that a private company called Red Planet Corporation had sent their own team to Mars. The company's ship carried Dr. Yoon Ha-jin and 4 other scientists. They planned to land 30 kilometers from Base Olympus. They can't just come here without permission, Do Hyun said angrily. It's dangerous. They could ruin everything we've done. Min-ji had been quiet lately, still worried about how her bacteria were changing. Now she spoke up. Maybe we should work with them. More help could be good. The new ship landed 3 days later. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin was a tall woman who walked like she owned Mars already. She visited Base Olympus with 2 of her scientists. Your work is impressive, she told Taiwan's team. But our company has better technology, better processors, better solutions. Let us help you make Mars habitable faster. Your help comes with a price, Jaya said. You want to control Mars for your company. Ha-jin smiled. We want to make Mars ready for people to live here. Isn't that what you want too? But later that night, Min-ji discovered something that changed everything. Looking at her latest bacteria samples, she saw that the changes she had worried about were spreading faster. The bacteria were now making something new in the soil, something that could be dangerous. She took her findings to Taiwan and Jia. The bacteria are producing a new chemical, she explained. If Dr. Yoon's team starts using their processors near our bacteria, the chemical reaction could destroy months of our work. Jaya understood what this meant. She called another meeting with the coalition. This time, she spoke with new confidence. Mars is delicate right now, she told them. The terraforming process has started, but it's at a crucial point. Having different teams with different methods could ruin everything. We need everyone to work together, following one plan. She showed them Min-ji's data. The coalition leaders looked worried again, but for a different reason now. They realized that rushing to control Mars could destroy their chances of making it habitable. What do you suggest? Dr. Wilson asked. Let Dr. Yoon's team join us, Jaya said. But under our leadership, we'll use the best ideas from everyone, but we must work as one team. Mars doesn't care about Earth politics. It only cares if we do this right. The room was quiet as the coalition members thought about her words. Outside Base Olympus, the Martian wind blew red dust across the valleys, where their work was slowly bringing life back to the dead planet. The next few days would decide if humans could put aside their differences long enough to give humanity a second home among the stars. 3 years had passed since the team first landed on Mars. The joining of Dr. Yoon's team with Base Olympus had worked better than anyone expected. Her company's advanced processors, working together with their original machines, had helped speed up the terraforming process. One morning, Sun Ho was checking his weather instruments when he noticed something strange. The sky above Base Olympus looked different. Dark clouds were forming, something no one had seen on Mars for millions of years. Everyone needs to see this, he called through the base's communication system. The team gathered quickly at the main window. Those are real water clouds, Jaya said, her voice filled with wonder. The atmosphere is finally thick enough to hold water vapor. Ha-jin checked the readings from their combined processor network. The air pressure in this region is 3% of Earth's now. It's enough for water to stay liquid. They all watched as the dark clouds grew bigger. Years of work had led to this moment. Their bacteria had made enough oxygen. Their processors had protected the new atmosphere. Now they would see if Mars could have rain again. The first drops fell slowly. Through the base's cameras, they watched water fall from the sky and hit the red soil of Mars. It was a moment none of them would ever forget. But Min-ji noticed something wrong. She rushed to check the rain's chemical makeup. This isn't good, she said, looking at her screen. The rain is too acidic. It's much stronger than we expected. What does that mean? Taiwan asked, though he could already guess the answer. If this rain continues, it will damage our processors, Do-hyun explained. The acid will eat through the metal. We could lose everything we've built. The team quickly divided up tasks. They had to solve this problem before the rain destroyed their work. Ha-jin and Do-hyun began protecting the processors with special covers. Sun-ho worked to predict how long the rain would last. Min-ji and Jae had the hardest job. They needed to find out why the rain was so acidic and fix it before the next rainfall. They worked in the laboratory, testing samples and checking data. The bacteria have changed the soil chemistry more than we planned, Min-ji said, looking at her results. When the water mixes with the new chemicals in the air, it becomes acid rain. Can we change the bacteria to fix this? Jae asked. Min-ji shook her head. The bacteria are everywhere now. We can't change them all. But maybe we can change the air instead. They spent 3 days working without much rest. The rain continued, growing stronger. Every hour, they could hear the acid eating at the base's outer walls. The protective covers on the processors were holding, but they wouldn't last forever. Finally, Min-ji found a solution. If we change how the processors clean the air, we can reduce the acid. The rain will still be stronger than Earth's rain, but not strong enough to cause damage. The whole team worked together to adjust the processors. Ha-jin's knowledge of the new machines proved invaluable. They made the changes just as the first round of protective covers began to fail. Slowly, the rain became less acidic. The processors started working better with the new settings. When the storm finally ended, they went outside in their suits to check the damage. The Martian soil had changed. Where the rain had fallen, the ground was darker. In some places, they could see tiny pools of water, the first standing liquid water on Mars's surface in millions of years. It's not just rain, Taiwan said, looking at the changed landscape. It's the beginning of Mars having real weather, the start of a true water cycle. They had passed another milestone in their mission to make Mars habitable, but as they looked at the acid damage on their equipment, they knew that each success would bring new challenges. Mars wasn't going to make this easy for them. 5 years into the Mars project, the team's hard work was showing clear results. Small patches of simple plants now grew in the protected valleys near Base Olympus. The air pressure was slowly rising, and regular rains fell from the Martian sky. They had even started testing a new magnetic field generator, designed by Do-hyun and Ha-jin working together. One morning, Jae received an urgent message from Earth. The sun is going to release a massive solar flare, she told the others as they gathered in the control room. It's bigger than anything we've seen in 50 years. How long do we have? Taiwan asked, already knowing this was very bad news. The flare will reach Mars in 3 days, Jae replied. Earth's magnetic field will protect them. But Mars? Everyone understood what this meant. Mars had lost its magnetic field long ago. That was why its original atmosphere had disappeared into space. Now the solar flare threatened to destroy their years of work in just a few hours. The atmospheric processors can't protect the air from something this strong, Do-hyun said. We'll lose most of our new atmosphere. Ha-jin had been quiet, thinking hard. Maybe not, she said finally. The magnetic field generator we've been testing. Could we use it to protect the planet? It's not ready, Do-hyun protested. We designed it to work slowly, building up Mars' magnetic field over many years. We've never tried to run it at full power. But it's our only chance, Min-ji said. She had worked hard to create the plants now growing on Mars. The thought of losing them made her heart hurt. The team split into 2 groups. Do-hyun and Ha-jin worked on the magnetic field generator, trying to make it stronger. The others prepared the base and their equipment for the solar storm. If we turn the generator to full power, it might burn out, Do-hyun explained. We'd lose our chance to give Mars a permanent magnetic field. But if we don't try, we lose everything now, Ha-jin answered. She had changed in her years on Mars. The corporate leader who wanted to control everything was now a true member of their team. They worked without rest for 2 days, strengthening the generator as much as they could. Sun Ho helped them find the best places to put the backup generators, using his knowledge of Mars' old magnetic field. On the third day, they saw the first signs of the solar flare. The sky turned strange colors. Their instruments showed massive amounts of radiation heading toward Mars. "It's time," Ta-1 said. "Start the generator." Do-hyun and Ha-jin worked together at the controls. The generator hummed louder than ever before as they slowly increased its power. The whole base vibrated. 80% power, Do-hyun called out. Warning lights flashed across his control panel. "The system is getting too hot." "We need full power," Ha-jin said. "Just a few more minutes until the worst of the flare passes." The generator's sound changed to a high-pitched whine. Smoke started coming from its cooling systems, but on their screens they could see a magnetic field forming around Mars, growing stronger every minute. The solar flare hit with incredible force. The magnetic field flickered like a candle in the wind. Everyone held their breath, watching the readings. Then, slowly, the numbers began to steady. The magnetic field was holding. Their atmosphere stayed in place, protected by the artificial field they had created. When the solar flare finally passed, the generator was badly damaged. But it had worked. Not only had they saved their atmosphere, but they had also proved they could give Mars a new magnetic field. As they looked out at the Martian evening, they saw their small plants still growing in the valleys, safe under the shield they had made. Mars was no longer defenseless against the sun's fury. Another piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. 10 years had passed since the first team landed on Mars. The red planet had changed in ways that once seemed impossible. The air was thick enough now to create a soft blue sky during the day. Small forests grew in the protected valleys. Lakes of clean water reflected the sunlight. Mars was becoming a new Earth. Ta-1 stood at the window of New Olympus City, the first permanent settlement on Mars. The city housed 300 people now, with more arriving every month. He watched children playing in the indoor park, their laughter echoing through the dome. These children had never known Earth. Mars was their home. "The first Earth tree is ready for planting," Jaya said, walking up beside him. She and Ta-1 had married 5 years ago, after the success with the magnetic field generator. Now she carried their first child, who would be born on Mars in 2 months. "Is everyone gathered?" Ta-1 asked. "Yes, even Dr. Wilson came from Earth for the ceremony." They walked together to the airlock where the rest of the original team waited. Minji's plants had prepared the soil over the years, making it rich and fertile. Do-hyun's improved processors kept the air clean and breathable. Sun Ho's geological work had helped them find the best places to build. Ha-jin's company had provided the resources to build the city. They put on their light-breathing masks. The air outside was breathable now, but still thin, and walked to the planting site. A young earth oak tree waited in its special container. Around them, hundreds of people gathered to watch this historic moment. Dr. Wilson stepped forward to speak. 10 years ago, these brave scientists began the impossible task of making Mars livable for humans. Today, we plant the first Earth tree in Martian soil. This tree represents our future on this planet. Ta-1 looked at his old team as they prepared to plant the tree. They had all changed. Minji was now the head of Mars Biological Research Center. Do-hyun led the engineering team that maintained the city's systems. Sun Ho taught geology to the first class of students born on Mars. Ha-jin had turned her company into a foundation that helped people move to Mars. The tree planting was simple but meaningful. Each member of the original team added some soil around the tree's roots. As they worked, the Martian wind blew gently, carrying the scent of growing things instead of just dust. "The soil readings are perfect," Minji said, checking her instruments. "This tree will grow strong." "The weather forecast shows rain tomorrow," Sun Ho added. "Good timing for a new planting." As they finished, Jia suddenly put her hand on her stomach. "The baby's kicking," she said with a smile. "I think she knows this is important." Taiwan put his hand next to hers. Their child would be the first human born on Mars, the first true Martian. She would grow up with this tree, watching it become tall and strong as Mars became more like Earth. "What should we name her?" he asked Jia quietly. "I think we should name her Huayang," Jia replied. "It means flower blooming. Like this tree, like Mars itself, she will grow in this new world we've made." As the ceremony ended, people stayed to look at the tree and take pictures. Children ran around it, excited to see something from Earth. The sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful colors that no one had seen on Mars before they changed it. That night, Taiwan wrote in his journal, "Today we planted the first tree. Soon my daughter will be born. 10 years ago, we came to Mars with an impossible dream. Now we have cities, forests, and lakes. The red planet is no longer dead. It is becoming a true second home for humanity. Our work isn't finished. Mars still has many challenges for us. But now I know that humans can do anything if we work together and never give up on our dreams." The next morning, soft rain fell on the young oak tree, welcoming it to its new home on Mars.